Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. And you're here, of course, because you've taken the trouble to enter the IMAP Managed Account Awards for this year, and because you've been successful. And so, first of all, congratulations on being here. My name's Toby Potter, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the chair of IMAP, and it's my pleasure to host this evening's presentation. So a little about the format tonight, where after I say a few words of welcome, we're going to have a presentation by Jaclyn Narracott. We try always at each of our live events, or we have always at each of our live events, featured an Olympian as a speaker, because to us it seems that they represent sort of the pinnacle in their area of activity, and because most of them need the money. So I'll be inviting Jaclyn to speak in a few moments. She is in Canada with us, but joining us remotely. First of all, this will actually be a miracle of technology, this session. But before we go further on, I'd like to thank our sponsors for two categories in particular that are very important to us. Licensees, which has been there since the start, and which seems to me to be almost the most important category of all, because it represents that intersection of advice and managed accounts and investment management. And it's the one that's closest to my heart. And secondly, a new category for us, Australian Ethical, have agreed to sponsor the ESG category, which is new for us this year. But before I go on, I'd like to thank in particular our judges. The judges put a lot of effort into the work associated with this process. As you know, it's a lot of work for each of you to prepare your submission. We get about 50 or 60 organisations entering, some in several categories. Each of the judges takes the trouble to read and go through those emails, those submissions that they're involved with. It's a lot of work. They don't get paid. They do it for A, the pleasure of each other's company, and B, because their reward is my son is a chef, and so each year he only works in hatted restaurants. So each year we go to have dinner at the restaurant that he's working at. So one year Bentley, next year Cirrus. This year he's running the kitchen at a new French restaurant in Lavender Bay called Lulu, which I recommend to all of you, and we're going there tonight. Now this is great, except that it gives rise to two small problems. One for me, one for the judges. The one for me is that next year he wants to be working in France. The other option, which is a problem for the judges, is of course he may buy his own cheap and cheerful. But I can't emphasise how much we appreciate the work that the judges do. I've thanked all of you who do enter, and I know it's a non-trivial process to enter, but I think one of the things I take out of the submissions we get and the organisations who enter is just the range of business models that now managed accounts are an intrinsic part of. Some of our entrants are sort of self-licensed, and the portfolios reflect their investment philosophy. Some are part of larger groups. Some organisations have separated an advice process from an investment management process. Viridian, for example, were a winner in 2 years ago, and that's been very much their business model. Some are licensees where the managed account has become the way in which they articulate their advice service proposition, and that came through very clearly for me, and I think is a credit to them as organisations. And some organisations, for example, serve only wholesale clients. It's just a token of how much managed accounts are becoming part of the infrastructure of the delivery of advice. Now about a third of about 10% of the total advised market, as near as I can estimate it, at about $1.5 trillion, and managed accounts at a bit under 150 billion. I see no reason why they won't be at least a third of the advised market. So organising the awards is our way of showcasing best practice. And one of the things we take pleasure in being able to do is to invite the winners to take part in other IMAP events to showcase their process. So, for example, this year we'll be inviting the winner of the multi-asset class to take part in the Australian Equities panel at our upcoming Independent Thought Conference, and we'll be in Sydney in September. The whole of independent thought is a way of showcasing the work portfolio managers, as distinct from fund managers or investment managers, do. And 15 portfolio managers are participating in that conference. And we'll be inviting the ESG winners to participate in the October Independent Thought Conference in Melbourne. And then through the year, we try to make a point of engaging other winners in other IMAP activity. For example, we'll be holding 2 best practice webinars on the 12th and 14th of September, one on ESG, which will feature Australian Ethical, plus the winner of that category, and then on the Wednesday, the licensee award and BlackRock, as a way of showcasing why we think they were winners. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Jaclyn Narracott, the winner of the 2022 silver medal.
Hey. Oh, that still gives me goosebumps, and my heart's racing a million miles an hour now. That's I should be used to it by now, but I'm definitely not. Hang on, technology. There we go. Right, sorted. Okay. So I'm guessing that despite having just seen that, most people have no idea what skeleton is. Being in Oz, that's pretty common. Even over here, some people, you say skeleton and then they go, what? Explain. So basically, it's head first on a water slide. We've done an ice water slide with no brakes, and my chin is about an inch, sometimes less than that, off the ice. Quite oftentimes you'll hear a scraping sound, and that's my helmet just being pinned to the ice with the G forces, because they're about 4 to 5 G, depending on the track that we're on. Most of us will, well, on the fastest track in the world, will hit about 140 k an hour. For the most part, speeds are around about 120 to 130, so definitely faster than we can all legally drive, which is so much fun. And yeah, I think the biggest one there is that we have no brakes. So for me to stop at the end of it, it's my feet, which have spikes on the end of the on the bottom of them, which is also how we start. And then oftentimes there'll be foam mats at the end. There's some tracks where either the outrun, which is the bit kind of where we slow down, is way too short for us to physically stop ourselves, or we're just going way too fast. So as you've just seen, this is my final run, which I'm going to talk you through a little bit more to more detail. So start the grooves there, the width of a bobsled, and we're half that size, so we can pick which groove we get to run in, depending on whether depending on how the first corner is setting up. Green for us is good. So this is run 4. Basically, if it's green, it means you're leading. If it's red, you're not. Whole point of this is to go as fast as you can and make sure that clock stays green. If it looks like I'm doing nothing through that port, then that's good. The steering ideally is quite subtle, just trying to work with the sled and with the track to create the smoothest, most efficient line down the track. So yeah, Chrysler 114 k, which didn't feel particularly quick. And then it's just race to the finish line as fast and as smoothly as you can possibly get. Our sport for the Olympics is 4 runs over 2 days. but a normal race is 2 heats over over 1 day. So they slightly, well, hopefully, slightly more understanding as to what my crazy sport is. As with anything, nothing worth having come easy, which I think pretty much sums up my entire career. As a kid, I desperately wanted to be a summer Olympian. My uncle was a summer with a dual summer and winter Olympian. He was a sprinter and then a bobsledder. So I always wanted to emulate and ideally go one better than he did, which thankfully I managed to do. So I was a sprinter growing up, track and field, with dreams of, I mean, ideally London was kind of the goal in my head. Just having watched Sydney and the unbelievable event that was, and as a 9-year-old kid watching on, going, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to compete in front of 100,000 people. Haven't quite got close to that, but hey, that's what happens when you switch sports. Growing up, was still trying to do that, but eventually kind of came to the point through injuries and just being 16, I realized that I wasn't going to be fast enough to be an Olympian, despite the fact that that is exactly what I wanted to do. So I then tried to figure out any other way to get those 5 rings on my chest. I didn't necessarily care how it happened. It just had to happen. So I got to university and then happened to be in the right place at the right time to try bobsled initially, which having Uncle Paul, like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Why not? Got my first big European trip over to Austria, and to try a sport I'd only ever seen on TV. Cool Runnings was the movie of choice. So that's about as much information as I really had, even having Uncle Paul. Met our driver, who I was putting my life into her hands. I'd only met her when I got to Austria. Tried bobsled, and as much fun as it was, I am far too small to be a bobsledder. They're all a good several inches taller than me and about 15-20 kilo heavier than I am and than I will ever be, and I am totally okay with that. But it was fun. The first week on ice, I met our skeleton coaches, who were basically like, yeah, you're too small to be a bobsled athlete, try skeleton. To which my initial response was, okay, well, hang on, I've just got to Europe. Let me try bobsled first and see what this whole thing is like. I'll think about it. Curiosity eventually got the better of me. Came home from Europe in January 2012. I got back and managed to convince mum and dad that I had enough money left and that it was going to be a good idea for me to go to the US and try skeleton for the first time. Went across in March 2012, and within 2 runs, I was hooked. So to start skeleton, they send you down from about halfway down the track. So for us in Lake Placid in upstate New York, there's the track's 18 corners long. We started on the entrance to corner 9 with the instructions of lie there, don't move. You'll be fine. We'll catch you at the bottom, which is not the most reassuring. But hey, that's just, you've got to start somewhere. So first run was a bit of, oh my God, what was that? That was cool. Second run, go down, like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. I'm switching sports. How do I go faster? So we went from trying to hit 60k an hour initially, which is kind of the speeds we hit pretty much out of the start block now, and looking at going around the corner and looking up, being like, okay, well, I'm down here in the bottom. What do you mean I'm going to be all the way up there, like 3 meters above my head? So that was a bit of a mind blown. Went through the development process. My second year, at the end of my second year on ice, we lost all of our funding and all the other girls retired after Sochi. So I went from having coaches and teammates to being on my own, without a coach, without a manager, physio, everything that you should have as an elite athlete, and competing on World Cup, which were the best athletes in the world and no support. Great idea. But I kind of figured that these were the girls I wanted to beat. So in order to beat them, I was gonna have to compete with them and get used to being around them and watching and learning from them as I went. Got thrown together with one of my good mates now, Dutch athlete. I'm like, right, let's go travel the world together for the next 3.5 months. Thankfully, it all worked out all right. My first World Cup was interesting, to say the least. I gave myself concussion before the first day of training, and probably shouldn't have raced, let's be honest. But I was 23 on my own without a coach. It was my debut World Cup. I was always going to race. Like, that's just how it is. Thankfully, I've gotten a bit smarter since then. And then, yeah, over the years, slowly but surely gotten better, tried to make the most of the contacts that I grabbed along the way. Thankfully, in our sliding community, it's basically a family, because there aren't that many of us, and we all kind of understand what we're going through, and they're just everyone trying to help as much as they can, thankfully. Got to Pyeongchang, so qualified for my first Olympics in 2018, which was unbelievable. The first time I tried my speed suit on with the rings on my chest, I did like big kind of happy dance, because that's what I've been trying to do for so long. And then kind of the 4 years since Pyeongchang have been crazy. It's been massively up and down, which I'll get to in a bit, from concussion to the pandemic to my first World Cup win, and then eventually the Olympics. It's been an interesting 10 years on ice. So I alluded to my concussion. That was without a doubt the hardest thing I've had to go through. Most of my career has been challenging. That's what happens when you're an Aussie trying to compete against the massive European nations who have budgets more than what you can kind of ever imagine, and teams of 1,000 trackside helping their athletes out. One thing I'm very thankful for is that in the 2018-19 season, I had a partnership with the Canadians, and without a doubt, without that partnership, my career probably would have ended that season. So first year after the Olympics, I was in Calgary in Canada, doing our first runs of the season, pre-season. Went around Chrysler, which is a 360-degree corner, and hit a lump of concrete in the ice, which is in a position where if you get the corner right, you hit it. If you don't get the corner right, you don't. So quite a few people who were around me weren't hitting it. So smacked that. Wasn't particularly happy. Had a headache. Went again. Hit it even harder. Run 2. And at that point, I realized that, okay, right, definitely done for the day. Got home. Couldn't look at a screen for more than about 30 seconds. Kind of ticked pretty much every single big symptom for concussion, but I was on my own again, no coach, no physio to try and manage me, and let's just chill. So for the next probably 10 days, I kept trying to go training. I'd get up, pack my stuff, go to the track, try and track walk, which we do before most of the training, to see what little changes there are on the ice and what we need to adapt to try and go as fast as we can that day. And within a few meters, headache, all right, day off, try again. And I didn't rest, which was silly. Tried to push, as soon as I bent down, felt dizzy. Finally realized that, probably got concussion. Let's chill. It's first year after the Olympics. Managed to get back on ice and start competing. Was competing, sliding quite well. Then we got to Eagles in Austria for the second half. So this is post-Christmas. And Eagles and I don't get along particularly well, or haven't particularly well at the best of times, but I was incredibly emotional, which again is one of the more subtle symptoms of concussion. And I was talking to our Canadian coaches, and I was like, this doesn't feel quite right. I was kind of out of it after some of the runs, my mates were asking me questions and I was taking forever to respond, which I was unaware of. I was just emotional and trying to go fast. We decided that I wouldn't race, which I think was a blessing. And when we got to St. Moritz, which is my favorite track, one of my favorite tracks in the world, it is the smoothest track in the world, hands down. It's built from snow, from scratch every year. So there are no vibrations. It is the best place to slide, and should not, unless you crash, give you concussion symptoms. However, I got off sled and I was really dizzy. And again, taking ages to respond to coaches, and they pulled me out and went, "No, you're done. We're going to put you through the concussion protocol, and let's see where you go from there." Drove home to the airport, and then by the time I got back to the UK, I was walking. I'd go for a walk around town, and I like just flat ground. I'd feel drunk. So as the adrenaline wore off, the worse and worse I felt. Ended up being diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. Sorry. And then from there, it was a 6-month rehabilitation, basically, with the knowledge that potentially this kind of could be it. So I did all of the rehab from what appeared from the outside to be silly little drills. So I got vestibular physio, which I had no idea even existed. But turns out my brain and my eyes weren't quite working together. So I had to retrain my eyes, how to like focus and with depth perception and so many things that we'd kind of always thought were slightly off. But all it took the concussion to go, okay, well, we need to fix that. And then silly little things like we've been trying to get my left glute to fire, the same as my right, for probably 15 years at this point. And then my vestibular physio said, okay, well, how about we try smelling lemongrass through my right nostril? And immediately my left glute was like, yeah, we can work now. So ever since then, there's been that. The photo that's up is me doing my eye training, which I then used as a warm-up before every day's training. And it was also then my gauge. So if that was off, then I didn't slide. Or I had a headache, just slightly more conservative, which has been hard when everybody else around you is still sliding and you're the one who's going, no, I can't physically do this anymore. I've seen the other side of this. Before I got back to sliding, I had to seriously sit down with my sport psych and be like, okay, well, what happens if I get to Whistler, which was where I was doing my return to slide, and I'm dizzy? Because that was a real possibility that I was going to go down the track, even from halfway down the track, and get to the bottom and feel dizzy. So I was hoping at that point that it was either going to be very black and white, which it was never going to be, because that's how sport works. It's never black and white. Thankfully, despite having all the planning that we had plan A, that, yep, we're good, season goes on as normal, 2022, here we come, to it's a great area, we need to seriously think about this, to the worst case scenario being, I'm dizzy, that's it, we're done, you're retiring. Yeah, thankfully, we're good since then. But even now, it's a battle to figure out what's concussion, what's my neck, and then drawing the line between how much do I need to push myself and deal with, frankly, shitty ice conditions, which are like super bumpy, and what can I handle, what can I push through. But hey, every silver, every cloud has a silver lining. I think that's kind of what I've been looking at. That's particularly how I looked at my concussion in the end. There were little things, like aside from my glute, I got to come home early, which I'd never done before, and spend more time with friends and family, get to see my best mate's hands party, just little things that I wasn't going to get to do that I managed to get to do. And then since then, I think finding the little tweaks, so the my depth perception being out, suddenly everything made a whole lot more sense about why I was late steering in certain points where like, well, no, I swear I'm steering where I'm supposed to, but I was either early or late. So suddenly saw the depth perception in a sport that is kind of determined by that, by how much you can see and making sure your timing's bang on. Then I got better, thankfully. So as much as it was terrible and it just sucked, in the end, I think it was a good thing. Similar to COVID, to be honest, as well. So speaking of COVID hits, and as much as it's raw and no one wants to talk about it, and I don't blame you because it was horrendous. I think without it, I possibly don't have my silver medal, because the first season where we were really in the pandemic, I only did one World Cup. So again, I was going to have, like, in addition to having to be coach, manager, physio, athlete, I then had to add COVID officer to that long list of things to do, which on a World Cup tour is, I mean, on any tour is not really an option, but trying to compete against the best of the world and then trying to figure out tracks and equipment on top of, okay, well, which country is shutting next? Which country can we get to? What accommodation do we need to rearrange? Just the whole logistics side of things. I looked at it and with my coaches and went, that's good. I went in tears. It was hard enough as it was being just thinking about trying to, we went through plans. I think plan A had about 6 different iterations. We ended up down to about plan G, which has never happened. Just trying to figure out what was going to be the best for my performance, particularly being 12 months out from the Olympics, but also what I was actually going to be able to handle. So yeah, I skipped the first 3 World Cups, I think it was, in the end, which was something the only reason I've ever missed a World Cup is because of concussion. So to have to voluntarily sit out of a World Cup because I couldn't take the chance of going on tour. So did that, got there, going through Munich airport to try and get to my first World Cup for the year was one of the more stressful things I've had to do. Is that the knowledge of this all hinges on me being allowed through border security. If they say no, my next 4 months are kind of up in the air and I'm going to be stuck in Germany. Got through that, thankfully. Managed to have my best World Cup result in Eagles to that point ever, off 5 runs of training. So not ideal to go into a World Cup race so my very first run of the season was OT1, official training, day 1 for that World Cup. Sign things to come, that was fine. And then went to Korea for 3 months, and without a doubt, the best thing I could have done, because it got me away from the comparison. So every year, social media is good and it's bad, but having the 9-10 hour time difference to Korea from everyone back in Europe meant that I could just focus on, first of all, getting through quarantine, because that was so much fun. manage hotel quarantine, particularly in Korea. But at least, thankfully, I managed to have a window opening, which I know a lot of people in Oz didn't have. So I was very grateful for very small things at that point. And I just got to slide and focus on the little things that you get to focus on to a certain extent in preseason. But once you're out competing, it's just trying to go fast and learn each track and manipulate each track as much as you can. So by being able to go to Korea, take that step back, and just chill, essentially. It was tough. We were doing a lot of training, and there was snowstorms at -30. It was fun, but it was nice to be back in Pyeongchang and on a track that I quite like. And I got to work on my push, and then just really focus in on trusting my process, and all the training that we were doing, it was working, despite the fact that some of the results I was getting on World Cup weren't necessarily great, the processes that we had in place were slowly but surely getting me to where I ultimately wanted to be. However, the World Cup so last season didn't exactly go to plan. It was, like my career, very up and down. First World Cup, Olympic season, first World Cup, straight out of the gate, top 10, absolutely stoked. Right, this is the year I'm finally going to medal. The following week, that bottom right photo was taken because half the training, I was training like top 5, top 6 all week. And then I think I finished 15th, having finished top 10 the week before. And just all right, guess we're not quite where I thought I was. Let's keep building. And there were a lot of lessons in the first half. Just no, process. Trust it. It's going to be okay. Christmas was the stress of COVID just added to everything. Within a 24-hour period, I went from being in Germany to the UK, then back to being then the Netherlands, because the Germans decided they were shutting the border. And at that point, we had 2 weeks left of qualification, and I couldn't afford to sit in quarantine for 2 weeks. So it was home, got back on a plane, dealt with all that stress of COVID testing, booster shots, all of it, getting back on a plane to Germany. Christmas over there again. And I was sitting in Winterberg in Germany, kind of just outside Frankfurt, this second last World Cup of qualification. And I just had enough. Like, all right, well, at that point, I knew I was going to a second Olympics. Like, okay, double Olympian, pretty good. Like, some people only get to 1, very few get to 2. You're an Aussie doing a silly sport. You should be back at home in summer. Double Olympian, you didn't think you'd get here at all. Maybe you don't need the medal. Yes, a World Cup medal would be brilliant, but to even get to the point of being a double Olympian was huge. Yes, it would have been great to emulate what some of my teammates had done, but I didn't need it. And that light bulb moment, which my sprint coach has been telling me for years, you just need to show you don't need anything else. You just need to be you and do the best that you can. But finally accepting that suddenly, unsurprisingly to my coach and Murphy's Law, the following week, Moritz, everything worked. And I surprised everybody to win my first World Cup. But that was it had been coming all season long. I just had to finally completely let go and believe that no, I was good enough. My career was just fine without any medal. But now I have 2, and I'm very, very happy with that. To win a World Cup, no one's ever done it. So that was cool to be the first Aussie to win a race, or to win a World Cup race. That was the one I'd been chasing, and to do it in St. Moritz too, which is the best track in the world, with my husband coaching. And then Beijing obviously was completely different to Pyeongchang. COVID tends to happen, but it was a really odd feeling in that one of those moments where you just feel like you're in the right place at the right time, and everything's flowing and working, despite the fact that the final day of training was terrible. I was in tears and questioning everything that we'd done in the final 2 weeks. But thankfully 24 hours of sleep and a break from the track and going through with Dom, my husband and coach. The fact that I had done all these corners quite well, and I was fast, but I stopped looking at outcomes and looking at speeds and times, because it was getting in the way. And then day 1 we get to the Olympics, and I don't know, it was easy and it was fun because this was everything we'd worked for, and I'd let go. I didn't need the medal. Wanted it for sure, but my self-worth wasn't hinging on that result, and I think that was the difference. And I also knew that it had to be good enough. Like, you don't have to be perfect at every single step of the way. It just has to be good enough and consistent, and that's what that's I think what got me my medal, and hopefully will get me a few more in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, we've got time for a question or two for Jaclyn, if there are any. Up at the back, yes. Yeah, Matt Hattersley. It's a good thing you're tall and at the back, yes.
Thanks. Quick question. Why was there a concrete block in the middle of that first track that you spoke about that caused the first concussion?
So that's just, it's underlying the way most of the tracks are made. They're all made out of concrete that's then shaped. And Calgary is 30 years old. It was built for the 1988 Olympics. And there's one part where two parts of the track meet, and they're not quite even anymore. And that's just what it was. Wrong place, wrong time.
Question here, Nigel, yes.
Yeah, just a question. You said you train together and it's a small world. How do you remain so competitive to win Olympic medals, to beat the competition?
I think some people deal with it differently. For me, some of my best mates are my biggest competitors. So the girl who won bronze with me in Beijing, we're really good mates. But that also drives us on because we want to just keep beating each other, particularly in the slightly more early days. But we're very fortunate that we're in a sport where what my friends do has absolutely no bearing on what I'm about to do, because they're not in the track. So I can only go as fast as I can go. And if they're better than me, well, then I need to get better, and vice versa.
For me, Graham, yes. Last question from Graham.
Jaclyn, did you ever actually regret doing the skeleton?
Nope, not once. There have been times when it's been snowing, and it's been snowing for weeks. I'm like, oh, just get me back on a beach. But for the most part, it's too much fun.
Hands up who wants to go down the... Look, Jaclyn, thank you very much. I've really taken a lot from your talk. Process, focus, the drive to get better at a personal level. There's a lot in what you've said for me. So thank you very much for your time and your effort. Yes. Great. Thank you very much. For the rest of the session, the bit that you're here for, which is the opportunity for the judges to say a few words in announcing the winner of each category, and to talk a little about that category. What we'd ask is that the winner then and their team, if they're here, with the judge, go out by the media wall out there, and we'll take the celebratory photograph with the trophy. So our first judge, Rob De Silva, talking about small caps.
Thanks very much, Toby. I'm very pleased to be presenting the first award of the evening for the category of Australian small caps. It's a sector that's both rewarding from an alpha perspective and challenging from a liquidity perspective. The liquidity profile of small caps means that managers must pay particular attention to implementation, portfolio turnover, transaction costs and market impact effects. That's on top of the deep and high intensity research effort that's required to generate alpha. On the positive side, it's a category where active management has a notably strong track record, with many managers achieving positive alpha over time. In fact, here's a fun fact for you, the SPIVA report, is that how you say it, from S&P for 2021 showed that 51% of active managers in this space outperformed the index over 15 years. So it's an attractive and competitive sector, and we had a strong field this year, as we always do. So I'm pleased to announce that this year's winner is Macquarie Asset Management, represented by Derek Billman.
Just like to quickly thank IMAP and the sponsors for hosting tonight. Also like to thank the judges for obviously their hard time that they put into judging these awards. Managed accounts have been a big part of Macquarie's business for around about 15 to 20 odd years now. It does cut across a number of different divisions in the Macquarie organisation, so it's a real team effort. Macquarie Systematic Investments is the team that does the investment side of things. And we run a systematic approach to investing, which is a little bit different to what others use in the small cap space. And what we're trying to deliver is consistent active returns. And so it's really nice to be recognised for those consistent returns that we've delivered over a number of years. Thank you.
So as I say, if Rob, if you and the Macquarie team would like to, and Lucy will take the celebratory photo. So thanks very much. Now our next section is international equities, and Nigel Douglas is the judge who's taken responsibility for that.
Thanks, Toby. So, despite the recent rally, international equities, as you're all aware, has been in the eye of the market storm over the last year, particularly for growth managers out there. Now, it's pleasing to see more entrants for global equities in managed accounts, because it's not an easy portfolio really to run. So we were looking for some specific criteria, clear investment philosophy, a well-executed process that works well in managed accounts, and looking at a well-resourced portfolio management team. Even though the portfolios tend to be concentrated, they need to be getting a good supply of ideas, and we do look for lower turnover, ideally, because that keeps the costs down in a managed account. But so, the sell decision is important as well. And finally, client communication is pretty important, particularly with all the activity this year. So from the entrance, we saw, a whole range of material, and some of it multimedia as well. Sign of the times. And finally, in the criteria, we had a weighting to performance, of course, risk adjusted, and fees. So, without further ado, as the cliche goes, the winner was Franklin Templeton. And I'd like to ask Janine Heyman to come up. Oh, the box, okay. Right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
We have to go up there, I think, for the photo.
Yeah, we're going to. I want to do a little
Oh,
speech.
you do speak.
Nigel.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Don't take that away from me, Nigel.
Oh, yeah. Well, you need to stand
Although I
closer.
can't stand over the lectern, so. Thank you so much, Nigel, and also thank you, Toby and IMAP, and also the judges, because just talking earlier in the evening, it sounds like it's a bit of a process, just going through all the entrants. I would also like to thank, we've got a marvellous team, and the Franklin Global Growth team that has been developed over the last 20 years, so I'm just really pleased to accept the award on their behalf. on behalf of Don Hubert and Francine Mew, who couldn't be here tonight. I guess lastly is also our clients, who over many years we've developed a partnership with them, and they've appreciated our true to label style, and also we focus more in that mid-cap space, so diversifying portfolios is really important to them as well. So thank you so much.
And now the next category is a critical one for managed accounts, multi-asset class, and Dominic McCormick is going to take us through that process.
Thanks, Toby. I so much more prefer doing these live compared to on Zoom from home last year, but could be because you don't have to supply your own drinks through the process. We had many entrants in the multi-asset category this year, and overall the quality of the submissions was very impressive. This made the process of discerning the finalists difficult, particularly with such a wider range of investment approaches representative. From largely passive in asset allocation or investment selection to very active across both. We also recognise that it is currently a particularly difficult and challenging time for multi-asset portfolio construction, especially for those products that have inflation plus as an objective, and given the very uncertain outlook for key market drivers. Fortunately in Australia, we have the benefit of a bumbling central bank that has been very good at clearly demonstrating what not to do when it comes to forecasting inflation and interest rates. The experience and depth of the teams involved was a key consideration, given the required coverage across many different asset classes and strategies. We're not big fans of the Scott Morrison megalomaniac approach to team management. I think we should put ScoMo on one of those skeleton sleds and see if we can get an apology out of him at the bottom. As in some other categories, recent years of the IMAP awards have seen greater participation by some of the larger investment groups, even if most of them are a little smaller than they were at the beginning of the year. The winner this year is a group with a long history of multi-asset management. In fact, so long that they were doing multi-asset, multi-manager, albeit not using today's managed accounts, when I worked at this company more than 3 decades ago and prior to Australia's last recession. They have a robust approach to assessing future economic and investment scenarios and building portfolios that are resilient across a range of such scenarios. The winner of the IMAP multi-asset category for 2022 is MLC.
It's good Nigel's not standing here. Look, I'd like to thank IMAP, Toby, all the judges. It's been a fantastic industry to participate in, and as Dominic mentioned, that MLC Asset Management has been helping advisors and their clients achieve their goals for over 35 years, and we're really excited to bring what we've been doing for over $200 billion worth of client money now to managed accounts in the last couple of years, and it's going quite well, and it's great to get this recognition. The other thing I'd say is all of us in this room really service advisors and their clients, so there's such a rosy future for advice and the value of advice, and one of our mottos is the future is uncertain, but one thing I'm certain of is managed accounts will continue to grow, will be the major way advice is implemented in the country.
Thanks very much. Now, as I mentioned, the next. I was running ahead of myself. The next and last of the asset class categories is the Australian Equities Award, and I'd like to invite Brad Matthews to say a little about that category.
Thanks, Toby. So in many respects, this is really like the Blue Rebound event or category. It's the one where it all started in terms of SMAs and managed accounts. So what we find with this category is that the quality is really high because a lot of these managers have been at it for a long time. And I guess that's evidence the process of evolution does work. If you survive that long, you must be doing something right. And that certainly came through in the quality of the applications. I think one of the things that separated the winner this year was just the high scores across all the categories that we looked at. There was really no weak point that we could identify with this winner. Good, very clear, very simple philosophy and process, good depth in their team, very simple and consistent client communications. And also in terms of performance, have had a very strong period over recent years. And I think with looking at that performance, there was certainly evidence that they weren't necessarily slaves to their process. They did take on some of the emerging trends in a macro sense and did really well out of some of their portfolio positioning. One more thing I'll say about this manager is that they really debunked the theory that you shouldn't invest with anyone who has their head office north of the Tweed River. The winner of the Australian Equities category is DNR for their high conviction SMA. And I believe Tom Glynn's here to accept the award.
All right. I don't think you can hear at the back, which is probably a good thing. But thanks, Brad. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Jenny, for making sure that we get here. Thanks, judges, not only for the award, but it's clear the contribution that you're making to the industry for advice practices is to try and clean up how they go about constructing portfolios. And congratulations to the nominees. If you get a nomination, it's generally a better lead indicator to future performance than winning the Blue Ribbon Award. Thanks, Brad. And congratulations to the team. I'll look after distribution, so I've got the good fortune of taking the credit for all the hard work that goes on in the investment team. These are always well received back in the office, but particularly this year because we've got the marketing machine going with the 20 years of the business, but the strategy that underpins this award is turning 20 years this year as well. Doesn't mean we can rest on our laurels. We've got new investors coming in every day. We've had investors that have just joined us in the last month, few months, the last couple of years. So we'll be back in the office tomorrow. The markets keep you on your toes, and we'll be looking to put some runs on the board and get back here next year.
As I mentioned at the start, for the first time this year, we've introduced an ESG category. And I know from my own experience in Philo Capital as well as at IMAP, ESG portfolios, responsible investing portfolios, are becoming central to the way advice businesses construct managed account programs. We've been delighted to have Australian Ethical sponsor this award, and it's now my pleasure to invite Leah Willis and David McDonald, IMAP's investment specialist, to present this award. Leah.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and nice to be in a room full of asset consultants, distributors, product providers, dealer groups, and I always say to Toby, it's amazing how he actually gets us all in a room at once. It's quite impossible in this day and age. I just wanted to really quickly say Australian Ethical has been investing responsibly for over 35 years. We're really proud of our heritage. It's not an easy thing to do, and I think a lot of the consultants in the room that we've been speaking to over the last couple of years understand that now, and I think it's a real accolade for all of these nominees tonight and finalists that they've actually been able to create multi-asset or other portfolios to be able to help advisors on this journey. We know that demand's increasing. We know portfolio construction in this space is really tough. And so I guess I wanted to share with you that we're going on our own journey. After 35 years of being a flagship domestic equities business, we've actually invested in an impact business. We're building global equities capability, and we're actually bringing a portfolio of alternatives to market as well. So we're continuing to evolve because you have to keep pace when you're constructing portfolios. I also just wanted to say that there's a lot of regulation coming down the pipe, and so impact measurement, when APRA, ASIC, SEC, ASX start talking about a category, you know that there's more to come. And so I think the challenge for the finalists and for any manager in this space is to keep pace and be aware of greenwashing and make sure that your labels actually stand up to what you produce for investors. With that, congratulations to all the finalists, and I'll hand over to David.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks to Australian Ethical for stepping in and sponsoring this award. As Toby mentioned, this is the first year we've had it, and as both of the speakers there mentioned, it's certainly a growing category. After a lot of our conferences and webinars and things we run, we often put out questionnaires and say, well, what topics would you like to hear from IMAP? And ESG is coming top of the list quite often, so it's certainly very much a growing area. Clients are not just wanting you to invest their money and get good returns, but they want to know what you're doing with it, and it's going into good places. So, you know, we had a lot of strong entries here in the category. The judges looked at the things we've heard from the other ones. It's important to have a good investment philosophy process to put that in place. We looked at the experience and size of the team that's involved. But I guess, obviously, on top of that, that there's a proper ESG sustainability process in there in the portfolios. And Leah mentioned greenwashing. We see today that ASIC announced they're doing an inquiry into greenwashing, so it's becoming a thing. We want to be sure that they really are ESG portfolios. And one thing where the winner probably did stand out in this category was they definitely focused on the E, S and G, where are the many that claim to be ethical funds that maybe don't buy oil and gas. And in some cases, we've seen the last couple of years, a lot of so-called ethical funds have ended up as probably being tech funds more than anything else. So a lot of strong entries here, a winner that stood out in almost every category and scored very well across the board. And it's my pleasure to announce that the winner is Lonsec.
Thank you very much. Super excited to receive this award, actually, and super excited to see this category be introduced into the awards this year as well. It's certainly something that we've seen grow in importance over the last 3 years as well in terms of our research and ratings, and certainly client demand as well for these kind of strategies. Sustainable investing has really quite passionate. We have quite a lot of passionate people in terms of responsible investing across the Lonsec group. I do want to give a quick shout out to the research team. We have been researching and rating responsible investment strategies since 2008, and our research team are really leaders in this space, so we really welcome this award. It means a lot to us. The other people I'd like to thank is really our clients, because this product really was bottom-up driven. It was really our clients coming to us and saying that they wanted to invest in a way that made the world a better place. And you know, a lot of their feedback drove how we constructed these portfolios. And again, thank you to IMAP for having us, and for the committee there for choosing us and selecting us as a winner. Thank you.
Now, look, our final category, as I mentioned at the start, for me, is essentially the pinnacle category of managed accounts, because managed accounts are an outcome and an important component within the advice process. Funds are a product of the funds management industry, but managed accounts are about implemented advice. So this category has an additional criteria to those that we apply to asset class categories. It is show us how your portfolio management process joins with your advice philosophy or articulates your advice philosophy. So now it's my pleasure to invite James Kingston from BlackRock, the sponsor of this category and our long-time sponsor in this category, to talk a little about BlackRock's involvement in this area and the use of BlackRock tools within the portfolio management process. James.
Thanks, Toby. This is indeed the third year that we've sponsored this award. I think in 3 years we've seen quite a lot in the industry. Suffice to say, we're all a bit greyer. Hopefully we're a bit wiser. But I think what has prevailed over the last few years beyond volatility is also some profound changes in the industry, in the way that we construct portfolios, in the way that our clients are asking us to build portfolios too, and also changes across society. We've seen more clients move to retirement. We're seeing more emerging investors come of younger generations, wanting scalable solutions, wanting ESG solutions, etc. So the need for exceptionally well-managed portfolios with a clear investment methodology and robust risk governance and strong execution is becoming far more important. None of us has crystal balls. We can't predict the future, so we can't completely avoid risk. But those who have done well over the last few years, and particularly this year, have managed risk well, they've adjusted their portfolios, and they've communicated really clearly to their clients and their investors what's happening in the world and what's happening to their investments. So as with previous years, we worked with the judges, we analysed the portfolios, we used Aladdin, which is our proprietary risk tool, to provide an analytical lens around those portfolios. So providing insights such as factor-based risk allocations, style factor exposures, implied stress tests, etc. And the level of granularity that we can get through those, through that analytics, allows us to assess, or allows the judges to assess rather, the investment philosophy and decisions that are coming through in those portfolios, and whether they're creating the overall risk profile and the exposures that are intended. So consistently, we've actually been doing a lot more of this with a lot of you in the room and also a lot of our clients across Australia as we've been asked to kind of step in and look at risk in this environment. So all the finalists are very worthy to be there. They're fantastic examples of people who can create very well balanced portfolios. And we'd like to congratulate all of you for being in the final. There's only one winner, however. So this year we'd like to announce that the winner of the Licensee and Manager Accountant Award is Morgan Stanley.
Thanks very much. Let me just say that, as James said, each of the finalists is a worthy finalist. But Morgan Stanley stood out for the judges in the depth of expertise that it had directly involved in the portfolio management process in Australia and the expertise within that team, as evidenced by the fact that Nathan Lim was promoted within Morgan Stanley this year. They were able to bring up a new team leader from within the existing team in Alex. We liked and appreciated the manager selection process and the thinking that went into active or passive as a way of gaining exposure in each asset class. So Morgan Stanley was again a worthy winner this year. So congratulations, Alex.
All right, thanks Toby, thanks James, and thanks the whole team at IMAP, and congratulations to everyone tonight, all the finalists in all the categories. I'm very pleased to win these awards. Obviously, you mentioned Nathan leaving a lot of the credit goes to the heavy lifting he did a number of years ago. Actually, I was less than 2 days ago still in France sipping rosé in the southwest, and I was not too much looking forward to coming back to work in cloudy Sydney, but now it's all forgotten. So thanks, everyone. I just want to say that we've put a lot of time and effort into enhancing our capabilities. We have the luxury at Morgan Stanley to be able to leverage best practices from the global network of Morgan Stanley in terms of both institutional and wealth management research, but also on the implementation side, we've added resources on the distribution side with Brent Finneran, who is here with us today, but also on the implementation side. So it's a never-ending job to keep doing a better job for the FAs and their clients. So thanks again, everyone, and hopefully we see you next year. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes tonight's awards ceremony. Please join us for a drink outside. Better luck next year for those who aren't going home with a trophy, and we look forward to you joining us. Thanks very much.